I visited 8 different countries in one trip for less than $1,600 flight and transportation costs. And in this video, I am going to show you how you can do the same. Welcome to Plan B Back to Africa. My name is Wayne. If you're new to this channel, welcome. Please note that costs for accommodation, visa fees, tours and food are not included. Everyone has different expectations and desires. Some like to travel high-end, others have a low budget, but you will see that you can do an Africa tour without breaking the bank. Now let's get straight into it. The first step, which is key, is that whenever you look for flights online, make sure you do so in incognito mode. That's when you use an Android phone or the private browser when you have an iPhone. I usually book my flights on Skyscanner, and the key here is, instead of looking for round-trip flights, check multi-city flights. That's the key, fam. I spent only a $540 for my flight from Germany to Ethiopia, from Ethiopia to Egypt, and from Egypt to South Africa. You know, each national airline does a stopover in their respective capitals. I used Egypt Air, and that is why I was able to include Egypt in my trip for such a cheap price. So it was basically a very long stopover. I spent almost 3 weeks in Egypt after my trip in Ethiopia. And when I was in Ethiopia, I visited family. You can do all different kinds of things. I really urge you to leave the capital because there are so many nice places to discover. However, of course, these trips come at an extra cost. So after having visited my family in Ethiopia, I traveled to Cairo, which was the stopover for my next trip to South Africa. And I spent, as I said, 3 weeks in Egypt. I left Cairo after 3 days, and please don't do the mistake and spend too much time in Cairo. Aswan is the place to be. I know so many people who visited Egypt, and they usually spend most of their time in the tourist hotspots like Hurghada, for example. Let me tell you, what a waste of time. Aswan is a magical place, and I love this place so much because it showed me a side of Egypt that the media won't show you, the black side of Egypt. You will see the Isis temple there. You can take a trip to Abu Simbel, which is 3 hours further south. So you're almost at the Sudanese border, and you can really see the legacy and the impact of the Nubian kingdom back then. And yeah, it's the people, they were just so nice, the most friendliest people I've ever met in my life. And it was like coming home. Really, the people were telling me, "Welcome home, sister." It was, if not the best part of this trip, visiting these 8 different countries, and I can't wait to go back. My plan was to travel the African continent with my 2 children for at least 8 months before we settle in Nairobi, and therefore I had to make sure to not spend too much money. I figured out different ways of reaching the destination that I want to visit, and in Egypt it was Aswan. As I said, it was the most magical place. And so because it's a little bit far away from Cairo, and I didn't want to take the bus since it's hot and far, as I said, and I didn't want to waste too much time, I booked a national flight from Cairo to Aswan and then returned from Luxor to Cairo. I spent $80 for this flight. And from Aswan to Luxor, I took a Nile River cruise with the local filuka. These are the boats that the Nubian people use. It's a sailing boat. It took us 3 days. Was one of the most magical experience in my life and one of our highlights during this trip. It was very affordable. I paid around $180 for me and my 2 children, which included the transportation with the filuka. It included the food, the drinks, and it was absolutely worth it. I can recommend to anyone to do exactly this itinerary. So when we reached Luxor with the filuka, we took our flight back to Cairo, and on the same day in the evening we departed for Johannesburg in South Africa. So this is the multi-city flight that I paid $540 for. From Germany to Ethiopia, Ethiopia, Egypt, Egypt, South Africa. I spent around a month in Johannesburg until a friend that I met at the University of Cologne came to South Africa and invited me on a trip to Zimbabwe. Honestly, Zimbabwe was never on my bucket list, but oh God, I am so grateful for taking this opportunity because the country is simply mind-blowing. We took a bus from Johannesburg to Bulawayo in Zimbabwe and we paid $40 for one way. And when we were in Zimbabwe, we visited places like the Misi Oa Tunya Falls, which are a must, also known under the colonizer's name Victoria Falls. And here is a very important tip. Make sure that when you're at the border to Zimbabwe to get your visa, to get a multi-entry visa. This is very important so that you can cross the bridge to Zimbabwe, because where the Misi Oa Tunya Falls are, there is a bridge connecting Zimbabwe and Zambia. You can basically walk across the bridge and reach Zambia. The single entry visa to Zimbabwe costs $30, while the multi-entry visa only $45. So you are able to cross the bridge to enter Zambia, discover Zambia, come back to Zimbabwe without paying another $30 for the visa, and then just discover the country. Another place that we visited in Zimbabwe, which was on my bucket list for a long time, was Greater Zimbabwe in Masvingo. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and these are basically the ruins of the old Greater Zimbabwe Kingdom. I also learned that the name Zimbabwe is derived from this heritage site, Greater Zimbabwe, and Zimbabwe actually means big house of stone. After having explored Greater Zimbabwe, we returned back to Bulawayo and took the bus back to Johannesburg. After having returned from Zimbabwe to Johannesburg, we rented a car from Avis to do a road trip to Cape Town. Make sure that when you book a car, that you book one with unlimited mileage. That's very important. The journey took us about 14 hours, but we did a stopover in Bloemfontein and stayed there in an Airbnb overnight, because I like to travel slow, discover nice places on the road, and whenever we felt like this is a nice place to take a break, we just did so, no rush, and it was just a very beautiful road trip. The landscapes are so amazing. The highway is not only safe but also very, very good in terms of its infrastructure. And so yes, after 2 days of driving, we arrived in Cape Town, and for the rental car from Johannesburg to Cape Town, we paid around $200. Please note that I was also able to travel at such a low cost because I was sharing the costs for rental cars with my friends. So this is an amazing opportunity to do a group trip with your boys or your girls or your family, and you know, you will just have unforgettable experiences. We stayed about 2 weeks in Cape Town, explored the area, visited Robben Island, which is a must in my opinion, and then decided to embark on another road trip to Namibia. It's very, very important that when you want to do a road trip to Namibia, that you take a good SUV, because if you want to visit Deadflay and the roads in some parts of Namibia are very rough, trust me, you will need a good SUV. We paid in total around $800, again shared with my friend, and this included unlimited mileage. Again, unlimited mileage is a must, so you can travel wherever you want without breaking the bank, and including fuel. And so the journey took us around 14 hours. We first drove straight to Windhoek. The trip was breathtaking, also one of my highlights during my entire journey through the African continent. Driving through Namibia sometimes feels like you are on a different planet. It's just indescribably beautiful. The sunsets, I have never seen sunsets like this, and I have never seen such a beautiful sky at night like I did in Namibia. You could see the Milky Way from everywhere. I mean, not from Windhoek because there's a lot of light pollution, but outside of Windhoek and other bigger cities, the country is really thinly populated, so there's almost no night pollution, which allows you to see a million stars in a crystal clear sky. We visited Namibia in the months of April and May, which was the perfect time in my opinion, because the weather was not as hot as in other months. And so we first visited Windhoek. And being in Namibia as someone who grew up in Germany was a crazy experience, because Namibia used to be a German colony and the colonial legacy of the Germans was still visible in terms of its architecture. There was a church which looked like a church in South Germany, and overall there were so many Germans still in the country, so many roads with German names and little towns named after small towns in Germany. It was really strange knowing you're in the middle of the African continent, but you could still see the impact of the German colonial times there. After having explored Windhoek, we took a trip to Swakopmund, which was one of my favorite places because I finally managed, and this was always a big dream for me, to be in a desert where I celebrated my birthday. And the best part about the Namib Desert in Namibia, which is also the oldest desert in the world, is that it meets the Atlantic Ocean. It is so beautiful. It's like you have to see it to believe. And we took some quads, we did a tour through the desert, and then we were able to slide down the dunes, which was so much fun. I think I even enjoyed it more than the kids. Anyway, after having explored Swakopmund, we took the trip through the desert to Sossusvlei, which was an unreal experience. This really felt like we are on a different planet. This 1,000-year-old trees in this dead valley, and then with the dunes surrounding it, the clear blue sky. You have to see this to believe it. This is a once in a lifetime experience, and I cannot even believe I was able to see all these places on such a low budget. Today, looking at these videos and pictures, I can't believe that I was there, that I was actually there. It always seemed so far away. You know, when you dream of traveling the African continent, when you see these images, these videos on social media, they seem so far away until you do the first step and overcome your fear and doubt. Of course, you need to put some money aside, but as I will show you in this video, you don't have to break the bank to visit these incredible places. After having explored Sossusvlei, we took the journey back to Cape Town, returned the rental car. We spent in total around 10 days in Namibia and then another month in Cape Town, just, you know, relaxing and doing some sightseeing until it was time to leave, because I reached my 90 days limit for my tourist visa. And so our next destination was Zanzibar, and I figured out there are different ways to reach Zanzibar. The cheapest way is to take a flight to Livingstone, which is around $180 for the one-way flight, and then take a bus from Livingstone to Kapiri Mposhi to then take the train, the Tazara train. Tazara stands for Tanzanian Zambian Railway, which takes you to the city Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. This would have definitely been the cheaper option, and I also think the more beautiful option. Imagine taking a train through these vast landscapes and you will see wild animals. It's a train that has also beds and has showers, restaurants. I have friends who took this route and they really recommend it. However, we decided to take a one-way flight from Cape Town to Zanzibar, which was only a $270 for the one-way trip. In total, we spent another 3 months on the island of Zanzibar, had an amazing time, and then departed for country number 8 to Kenya, which was our final destination where we eventually settled, where I am right now. The cheapest way to reach Nairobi from Zanzibar is by ferry and by bus. We spent $35 from Zanzibar to Dar es Salaam on the mainland, and then spent 45,000 shilling per person, which is around $18 to reach Nairobi from Dar es Salaam by bus. And so in total, I spent less than $1,600 per person for these whole 8 African countries. We spent in total 8 months to do the whole trip. It was an unforgettable experience, a unique experience, an amazing way to bond with my children, to teach them about the beauty, the cultural diversity, and the richness that our beautiful continent, Mama Africa, offers. And I think this will shape them as humans, and to understand how proud they can be to be children of this continent, and I really recommend this itinerary to everyone. It's a child-friendly itinerary. They had the best time of their lives. Of course, you don't need to take 8 months, but I would say the minimum that you should take for such a big journey, I mean 8 different countries, and they are also culturally so different from each other. It needs time to immerse yourself into the places, to adapt to the different cultures. You know, I'm still processing what I've experienced in Egypt, what I've experienced in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, and I think it will take years to process that, and I can't wait to return to these countries. However, I believe the minimum that you should take to do this trip is 6 weeks, but that's like you're pushing through. You're not spending more than 10 days in each of these countries. But if you have the time and you are able to work remotely while visiting these places, then it's something that you should absolutely do, and I'm sure your children will thank you for this experience for life. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode and found some value in it. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments below. I'm happy to share all my resources with you, the tours that I took, the contacts of the tour agencies, our brothers in Nubia, in Aswan, who took us for the sailing trip from Aswan to Luxor. I like to support these brothers, and I look forward to see you next time. Bye.